So for step 19, attaching the front coil springs. Well, there's a couple of things we need to do here because you actually have a choice of setting this up as soft or setting it up as hard suspension. Now I've decided, since we made the rear hard, I'm going to make the front a soft suspension. So we're going to use the D1 pieces and those O-rings there. So we're going to need to grease up the pin, but we're also going to need to do this MR5, and it looks like a small part, but actually it's just this piece of rubber tubing, which we're going to need to cut to the size that they are asking us to do to make it look like that. So then once this is greased up, we'll put it through the hole, put it through the O-ring, that plastic piece right there. Then we put it through the tubing, then the spring, and then we're going to attach it to the piece that we put onto the arm earlier. Now the other thing they're showing you is snapping on the steering rods. I'm not going to do that in this step, which I will explain later, but I don't like doing that at this stage because there's going to come a point where they want you to do a check to make sure that this is correct, and a lot of times it's not. So I don't see the point in snapping that on there when we have another step to do where we can make final adjustments. So I'm leaving that part out. So the only thing we're going to do is we're going to attach and build these front dampers. So we've got all of our parts here ready to go, and I'll set this up and we'll start building. So one of the things we have to do right off the bat is get this rubber tubing cut into the right sizes. And the beauty of Tamiya instructions is you can actually just place this on there, and you can see that they have made the markings for those 5mm bits. So if I put this on either side and we cut, basically if I do a cut there, I can then do a cut here. And I'm just putting pressure on the X-Acto knife simply by putting pressure and then kind of moving it around. It's going to nicely make a cut. So get rid of this excess, and there we have the 2 bits that we're going to need for these dampers. So if we work on this side first, we have to grab one of the pins, and we need to be able to grease this up. So I'm just going to twist this up a bit, and we'll grease it. Do what we can to grease this one up. Grease as much of it up as possible. There we go. There we are. So then we're going to grab our chassis. So as you can see the way this is going, this pin has to fit through the top, but there's an O-ring that sits on the inside of, what was it, D1. And then there's the rubber tubing. So if we stick that down, let's put that through. Push it through. Okay. So then we've got the rubber tubing. So we'll put one of those on there. And then we've got the spring. And the spring is going to go up and onto there. And then that spring has to sit onto that piece that we put on before. And then of course this is going to screw into that base part. So that's what we'll do right now. So one of the things to make note of is, depending on whether you're going to do the softer suspension or the harder suspension, they're showing you more like a 3D imaging of what it's going to look like inside when you've finished it. So if you look at this one, because we're going to do the softer suspension, so we're going to use D1 and just the one O-ring. If you take a look at that, you can see where the O-ring is, you see the piece, you see where the rubber is, but notice that the damper shaft is screwed all the way in to the bottom piece, which are the ones that these pieces here that we put on early in an earlier step. So they are going all the way in. So just know that when you're screwing that damper shaft in, you want to go all the way until it can't go anymore. Is make sure that it's in line. Switch my screwdriver. And I'm going to put the other piece on the screwdriver now. Loosen it up. Just get the grease flowing. And there we go. So there is our front, one of our front dampers, and I've got it set for the softest setting. So we'll see how this works. So we'll build the other one now. So for this side, same idea. We need to grease up the pin. Put a fair bit on there. Okay, now we're going to put that pin into the hole. Then we've got an O-ring. And we've got this piece right here, which the O-ring sits in anyway. Push that through. And then we have the rubber piece, which goes on after that. And then we've got the spring. So that fits onto there, and then it's going to pop onto the other part that we put on before. So now this is going to get screwed into that part as we did with the other side. So if I hold this in place, yeah, and screw this in more. And you're going to see that it actually pulls it up and together. So I'm going to hold it this way, which is actually easier. So if I put my index finger and push while I'm pushing on the screw or damper shaft, you can feel that it's going in. And now it's at its end point. Perfect. So there we go. So there is the other side. And it feels correct. So there we have both sides of the front dampers done. It is a very simple design, but it works. So that step is now complete. So now we're going to move on to step 20, which is working on the front wheels.